It had been 2 weeks since Daniel stood outside the little seaside cafe, holding a velvet box with a ring he spent half a year saving for. The same cafe where he had asked Anne to be his girlfriend 3 years ago. Everything was set. Her. Favorite song playing inside, a reserved table by the window, and a note tucked into a flower vase that read, "Let's make forever official." But Anne never showed up. Instead, she called him 4 hours later, her voice trembling but clear. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I saw Alan today. I didn't mean for it to happen, but everything just came back. We talked, and it felt right." He didn't say anything. His mouth was dry, his heart sinking slowly like a stone into a lake. She was crying, but he didn't ask why. He didn't ask what she meant by everything came back. He didn't even ask if Alan felt the same. He just stood there watching people pass by, carrying coffees and holding hands, while his whole future got erased in a 3-minute call. The ring stayed in his pocket for weeks. He couldn't bring himself to look at it. Every time he closed his eyes, he'd see Anne smile, the way she'd lean on his shoulder in movie nights, how she'd whisper, "I love you more than yesterday," before hanging up. None of that made sense anymore. Not when she left him for a guy she hadn't seen in 10 years. Not when she chose a memory over everything they had built. Daniel wasn't bitter. At least that's what he told himself. But he wasn't okay either. People around him started noticing. He talked less. He smiled like someone forced to, like it hurt his face. He deleted every photo of them together, unfollowed her online, blocked Alan's number, even though it was never saved to begin with. He didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or the fact that it didn't even feel like a betrayal. It felt like she had been waiting for this to happen, like he was just a stand-in, a placeholder until fate reconnected her with the one she really wanted. Months passed. Life didn't stop, even if his had. He poured himself into work, stayed back late just so he wouldn't have to come home to silence. Until one day, while picking up groceries, he heard a voice behind him. "Daniel?" He turned around and there she was. Anne, holding a toddler. He froze. Her hair was tied up messily, face pale, and her hand tightly clutching the child's. The boy looked maybe 4, curly brown hair and eyes too familiar. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. The last time they saw each other, she was in his apartment, returning his key and leaving without looking back. She swallowed. "Can we talk?" He looked at the kid, then back at her. "You married him?" She blinked. "No, not yet." "And this is his kid?" Her lips parted, then closed. "Yes, his name is Lucas." He stared at the boy, then nodded slowly. "Yours and Alan's." Anne looked down. "We didn't plan this. I didn't know I was pregnant until months after I left." Daniel wanted to laugh, but nothing came out. He turned to walk away, but Anne stopped him. "He doesn't want to be involved." Alan left last month, just packed up and left the country. No calls, no goodbye. Daniel paused. "He left you?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "And the kid?" She hugged Lucas closer. "He doesn't know his father. I'm doing everything alone." Daniel didn't know why he felt what he felt. Anger, confusion, and something that looked too much like pity. He didn't owe her anything. She left him, chose someone else. Yet here she was, broken and abandoned, with a child who looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. "I know I hurt you, but you were the only one who ever made me feel safe." He wanted to say something cruel, something final, but Lucas tugged at his hand, just a little touch, and Daniel's heart cracked in a place he didn't know was still soft. "I'm not here to ask you for anything," she said. I thought you should know." He stared at her, then at the boy again. And somehow, without saying it out loud, Daniel knew his life was about to change again. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, his fingers tangled together, the light from the hallway cutting a pale line across the dark wooden floor. Every few minutes, he'd hear Lucas's voice echo in his head. Small, curious, and way too trusting for someone who had already been let down by his own father. He had told Anne he needed time. She didn't push. She just nodded, gave him her number again, and walked away with Lucas in her arms. But that image, her walking away, not like the last time, not confident or certain, but like someone dragging everything they had left, it kept haunting him. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't signed up to be the one picking up the pieces of a mess he didn't make. Yet a part of him, the part he hated most, wanted to call her the moment she left. By morning, he still hadn't decided what to do. So he went to work, as always. Buried himself in numbers, emails, meetings. But nothing felt normal anymore. During lunch, he caught himself staring at a father playing with his son on a bench across the street. It made his chest ache in ways he couldn't explain. By the third day, he finally gave in. He called her. "Hey," he said. There was a pause. "Hey, I don't know what you expect from me, Anne, but if you ever need someone to help with Lucas, just sometimes I can do that." Silence. Then her voice cracked. "Thank you. I didn't think you'd even talk to me again." "I didn't think I would either," he muttered, staring at the ceiling. So it started slow. At first, he only saw Lucas once or twice a week. They'd go to the park, build Legos, eat too many fries. Daniel never tried to act like a father, but Lucas didn't seem to care. He treated Daniel like he'd always been there. Called him D after the first week, then started saying Dan like it was his own nickname for him. Anne kept her distance. She looked exhausted all the time. She was working double shifts at a bakery and a night cleaning job just to make ends meet. Her hands were red from soap. Her eyes had no spark. She smiled sometimes, but it never reached her eyes. Daniel saw her struggle, and he hated how much it still got to him. One evening, after Lucas fell asleep on his couch with spaghetti sauce on his chin, Daniel helped carry him back to Anne's place. It was a small apartment on the 3rd floor, no elevator. The walls were thin, the sink leaked, and the heater made weird noises. She looked embarrassed showing it to him. "It's not much, I know," she said, adjusting her cardigan. He shrugged. "It's a roof. You're doing your best." She looked at him then, really looked. "I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel." "Yeah, well, you did." "I know." The air between them was heavy. She turned away to tuck Lucas into bed. When she came back, he was standing by the door. "I should go." She nodded. "Thanks again for being kind. You didn't have to." Daniel hesitated. "If I didn't, who would?" A week later, Anne got sick. Nothing major, just the flu, but enough to knock her out for days. She called Daniel in a panic because she couldn't even stand long enough to make Lucas breakfast. He came over without thinking. He made cereal, found a cartoon channel, got her medicine, and stayed. He stayed for 3 days. Lucas clung to him like a magnet. When Daniel left to get groceries, the boy cried at the door. Something shifted in those 3 days. Something neither of them said out loud. Anne started texting him more. Not just for help with Lucas, but random things. Funny things, the boy said. Photos of him painting a giraffe that looked like a banana. Even just a "hope work was okay today." Daniel responded every time. One night, after putting Lucas to bed, Daniel found Anne sitting on the kitchen floor with her head against the fridge. "I'm failing," she said softly. He sat down beside her. "No, you're not. I can't. Even afford decent shoes for him, I have to choose between gas and groceries every other week. I never wanted to be this version of me." Daniel looked at her. The girl he had once planned to marry. The woman she had become. Weathered, but still fighting. "I think," he said slowly, "you're stronger than you know." She looked at him, eyes glassy, "and I think he's lucky to have you." She didn't cry, not then. But something in her face changed. Like a little piece of guilt melted away, and Daniel, sitting next to her on the cold floor, realized something terrifying. He wasn't just helping. He was becoming a part of them. 3 months in, Daniel knew every crack on Anne's apartment walls. He knew which step creaked the loudest on the staircase and that Lucas hated broccoli but loved the word broccoli because it made him giggle. He also knew that Anne had stopped wearing makeup, not because she didn't care, but because time didn't allow her the luxury anymore. He never moved in, but it felt like he had. Every night after work, he'd swing by to check in, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just his presence. Lucas started waiting by the window around 6 p.m., peeking through the blinds like a tiny watchman. Daniel didn't fight it. He didn't fight the way the boy would jump into his arms like he'd been gone for days instead of hours. He didn't fight how natural it felt to help him brush his teeth, read him a bedtime story, or carry him to bed when he fell asleep mid-cartoon. And he didn't fight the way Anne started looking at him again, not with the cold awkwardness from before, but something warmer. Something quieter. Something she tried to hide but couldn't. One evening, as Lucas slept curled between them on the couch, Anne whispered, "I don't know what we are anymore." Daniel turned his head slightly, staring at the dark TV screen. "Neither do I. But I know you don't deserve this kind of mess," she added, her voice barely above a breath. He didn't respond right away. Just looked at Lucas, who had drooled a little on his shirt. "Maybe I want this mess," he finally said. Her eyes searched his face. "Why would you want to clean up something someone else broke?" Daniel gave her a tired smile. "Because he's worth it." Anne swallowed. Her eyes flickered to Lucas and then back to Daniel. "And me?" He hesitated. "That's the part I'm still figuring out." Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that spoke volumes without needing noise. Daniel didn't move. Neither did she. The next day, Daniel got a surprise. He was picking up Lucas from daycare. Something he did often now, and one of the other parents smiled at him and said, "He talks about you all the time. Says you're his dad." The words caught Daniel off guard. He didn't correct her. Just nodded, forcing a small smile, but his heart thudded like someone had dropped a bowling ball into his chest. That night, he couldn't shake it. Dad. He wasn't. Not really. But it felt too right. Too real. Lucas had chosen him. Without asking, without demanding anything in return, the boy had decided Daniel was his safe place. Anne noticed his silence that evening. Something wrong? He told her what the woman had said, waited for her to laugh or brush it off. She didn't. "He's been calling you that behind your back," she said quietly. "I didn't tell him to. I swear." Daniel looked at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know if you'd stay." His chest tightened. "And now?" he asked. She bit her lip. "Now I think you already have." Daniel didn't sleep much that night. He sat by the window in his own apartment, staring at the empty ring box in his drawer, the same one he hadn't thrown away. He thought he'd kept it as some pathetic reminder of what he lost. But now he wondered if maybe it was for something else. Maybe not for Anne. Maybe not even for Lucas. Maybe it was for the man he was becoming, someone he never expected to be. The next morning, Lucas ran to him with a drawing. It was him, Anne, and Lucas, stick figures holding hands under a crooked rainbow. Above it, written in chunky, uneven letters, "My family, Daniel." Couldn't speak. He hugged him, held him tight, and blinked hard until the sting behind his eyes passed. Later that night, Anne pulled him aside while Lucas was in the bath. "I need to ask you something," she said. He nodded, cautious. If I told you I still loved you, but I was afraid to hurt you again, what would you say?" Daniel stared at her. Everything inside him twisted. The anger, the betrayal. It hadn't vanished, but it had softened. Time had changed the sharp edges. "I'd say, I never stopped," he said. Her breath caught. She reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. Lucas yelled from the bathroom, "Mom! Dan! The bubbles are attacking!" They both laughed, but something was different now. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was starting to look like healing. Daniel didn't tell anyone about what was happening between him and Anne, not because he was ashamed, but because he wasn't sure how to explain it. How do you tell people you're falling in love with someone who broke you? That you're raising a child who isn't yours, whose father is the man who once took everything from you? The truth was, Daniel didn't even know what to call this anymore. It wasn't revenge and it wasn't self-sacrifice. It was something heavier, something tangled. He didn't feel like a savior, and Anne didn't treat him like one. They just existed in this fragile, imperfect rhythm, and somehow it worked. But the world, as always, had other plans. One Friday afternoon, Daniel picked Lucas up from daycare. The boy was unusually quiet, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in his fist. "What's that, buddy?" Daniel asked as they walked to the car. Lucas didn't answer right away. When they got in, he handed it over. It was a drawing, messier than usual, mostly scribbles. But Daniel recognized the shape of a tall man with angry eyebrows and a woman crying beside him. In the corner, Lucas had drawn himself, alone. "Did someone say something to you?" Daniel asked, heart sinking. Lucas nodded slowly. "A kid said I don't have a real dad." Daniel swallowed. "And what did you say?" Lucas looked up at him, eyes too serious for a 5-year-old. "I said my Dan is my real dad. But he said no, 'cause my real one ran away. Is that true?" Daniel froze. How do you explain abandonment to a child who still believes in superheroes? He cleared his throat. "Yeah, your first dad did leave, but that's not your fault. That has nothing to do with you, okay?" Lucas leaned against him. "I don't want a new dad. I just want you." Daniel felt something inside him break wide open. That night, Anne found him sitting in Lucas's room long after the boy had fallen asleep. She leaned in the doorway, arms folded, watching the way Daniel tucked the blanket tighter around Lucas. "He told me what happened," she said. "Yeah, kids can be cruel." She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed beside him. "You handled it well." Daniel didn't look at her. "I'm not sure I did." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to keep doing this, you know." He turned to her, frowning. "Doing what?" "This, being the better man." Picking up what Alan dropped, his voice sharpened. "I'm not doing it for Alan." "I know. But maybe part of you still feels like you're trying to prove something." Daniel stood up. "If I wanted to prove something, I wouldn't still be here." Her face fell. "That's not what I meant." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know. Anne, this isn't a project. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't ask for any of it. But Lucas, he's not some broken toy I'm fixing out of pity. He's my kid. I don't care what blood says." Her eyes glistened. "And me," he hesitated. You still scare me." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I still want everything with you, even after what happened. And I don't know if that makes me strong or just really damn stupid." Anne stood and faced him. "Then we're both stupid." She touched his hand, slowly, gently, and he let her. The following week, something unexpected happened. Daniel received a message from an international number. It was from Alan. "Heard you're playing daddy now. Hope you're enjoying the leftovers." Daniel stared at the screen, rage burning slow and deep. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Instead, he walked into the living room where Anne was folding laundry and Lucas was singing some made-up song about dinosaurs eating pancakes. Daniel knelt down and looked Lucas in the eyes. "Hey, little man. Yeah? You want to do something cool with me this weekend?" Lucas beamed. "Like what?" Daniel smiled. "Like picking out some rings." Anne froze. "Daniel," he stood up, eyes on her now. "Not for marriage, not yet. I mean something else." He turned to Lucas. "One for you, one for your mom, one for me, a family ring. You in?" Lucas squealed, jumping into his arms. "Yay, yay, can it be blue? I want a blue one!" Daniel laughed, holding him tight. "Anything you want, buddy." Anne wiped a tear from her cheek. She didn't say anything right away. She didn't have to. Spatzer ring shop wasn't fancy. It sat between a laundromat and a second-hand bookstore, nothing like the places Anne once dreamed of visiting when she was younger, imagining velvet boxes and marble counters. But this one was perfect. Quiet, simple, honest. Just like the life she and Daniel were trying to rebuild. Lucas ran to the glass counter, his nose almost pressing against it. "There! That one!" he shouted, pointing at a chunky silver ring with a deep blue stone in the center. Daniel chuckled. "You've got expensive taste, kid." Anne stood beside them, arms crossed but smiling. She still looked unsure, like any second someone might walk in and remind her this wasn't how things were supposed to go. That fairy tales didn't start with betrayal, breakups, and missed proposals. But then again, maybe some did. Daniel picked out 3 matching rings. They weren't big, weren't flashy, but each had a small colored stone. Lucas's was blue, Daniel's a muted green, Anne's soft amber. Nothing loud, just 3 quiet promises they could wear on their hands. Lucas insisted on putting them on right there in the shop. He raised, his hand like a superhero once his was on. "Now we're all connected." Daniel bent down and tapped his ring gently against Lucas's. "Forever team, huh?" Lucas nodded seriously. "Forever family." Later that night, back at Anne's apartment, Daniel helped with dinner while Lucas played in the hallway. They moved around each other like a couple who had done this for years, passing plates, seasoning food, arguing playfully over how long to bake the garlic bread. "You ever imagine this would happen?" Anne asked, her back to him while stirring. "Pasta." Daniel leaned against the counter. "Not like this, but I always hoped it would be something like this." She looked over her shoulder. "Even after I broke us?" He exhaled. "Especially after." Anne set the spoon down and turned to face him. "I don't deserve that kind of grace, Daniel." "I'm not offering grace," he said. "I'm offering a second chance. You want it or not?" She walked over and took his hand, lifting it to her chest. "I want it, but I'm scared I'll screw it up again." "You probably will," he said, smiling softly. "And so will I. But maybe this time we'll screw it up together." She leaned in and kissed him, gentle, unsure, but real. The kind of kiss that didn't come from passion or apology, but from quiet understanding, from healing. Then a tiny voice interrupted. "Ooh, grown-up kissing is gross!" They both laughed, as Lucas stood in the doorway, arms crossed in mock outrage. All right, Daniel said, walking over and scooping him up. "No more kissing in front of the king." Lucas giggled. "I'm not a king, I'm a superhero now. Look at my ring!" He showed it off proudly, and Daniel tapped it again with his. The following weeks fell into a rhythm. Daniel started staying over more often, sometimes on the couch, sometimes not. Anne got a better job at a small boutique downtown, and Daniel helped fix the leaky sink and the broken heater. Lucas started calling him Dad more often, and no one corrected him anymore. But peace never lasts forever. One night, Daniel came home to find Anne sitting on the couch, pale, holding an envelope in her hands. "It's from Alan," she said. Daniel's stomach turned. She handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. "I've been thinking. Maybe I rushed out too soon. Maybe I want to be a part of Lucas's life again," the letter read. The check was for $10,000. Daniel stared at it, his jaw clenched. Anne's voice shook. "What do we do?" He looked at her. "Do you want him back in Lucas's life?" "No," she said immediately. "But it's not just my call. Lucas, he doesn't even remember him." Daniel folded the letter in half, then again, then once more. He tossed it into the trash and looked her straight in the eye. He left. He made his choice. And now he thinks he can just buy a seat back at the table? She didn't say anything. Just stared at the trash can, heart pounding. "We don't need his money," Daniel said. "And Lucas doesn't need his confusion." Anne nodded slowly, a strange mix of relief and fear on her face. You think he'll push harder? She asked. Daniel's voice dropped. Then I'll push back harder. That night, as he tucked Lucas into bed, Daniel looked at the boy's peaceful face and thought, "This is my son, no matter what some coward in another country decides." He kissed Lucas's forehead and whispered, "No one's taking you away. From me. Not again." The next week passed like a slow storm building in the distance. Quiet skies, uneasy air. Daniel tried to keep things normal. Trips to the park, pizza Fridays. Pillow fights that ended with Lucas crashing into sleep and Anne laughing so hard she cried. But under it all, he could feel it. Alan wasn't finished. The man hadn't reached out again, but something in Daniel's gut told him it was coming, and he was right. On a cloudy Thursday morning, Anne called him at work. Her voice was trembling. "He's here." Daniel nearly dropped his coffee. "What?" "Alan. He showed up at Lucas's daycare. He told them he was the father." Daniel's blood went cold. "Where's Lucas?" "He's safe." "They didn't release him. They called me right away. But Daniel, he was waiting outside. I had to ask one of the teachers to walk me to the car." Daniel was already grabbing his coat. "I'm on my way." When he got to Anne's place, she was pale and shaking. Lucas sat on the floor, coloring, blissfully unaware of the panic that had hid his mother's voice. Daniel went to her and pulled her close. She collapsed into him without hesitation. "What does he want?" Daniel asked. "He said he wants his son back. Said he made a mistake leaving, that he's ready now." Daniel pulled back and stared at her. "Ready? Like this is some job application?" "I don't know what to do, Daniel. I'm scared." Daniel's voice was steady, but his hands curled into fists. "He doesn't get to show up out of nowhere and act like he's a father just because he feels like it." She nodded. "But legally, he's still Lucas's biological father. That counts for something." They both looked toward the boy, now humming to himself and drawing a picture of a house with 3 stick figures in front of it. Their family, the one Alan had walked away from, the one Daniel had built from pieces. That night, Daniel stayed up reading custody laws. The next morning, they met with a lawyer. "He's the biological father," the lawyer explained. "He has rights, unless he voluntarily gave them up, or unless we can prove abandonment." 4 years, Daniel said. "He left before the kid was born and hasn't lifted a finger." The lawyer nodded. "That helps. And if you want to, move forward. There's another option." Anne sat up straighter. "What?" "He can sign over full parental rights, and if Daniel wants, he can file for adoption." Silence fell over the room. Anne blinked. "Adoption?" The lawyer nodded. "You two aren't married yet, but that doesn't matter. If you can prove a stable home and show the biological father has been absent or unfit, it's possible." Anne looked at Daniel. His face was unreadable. Then he nodded. "Let's do it." Back home, Anne paced the living room while Daniel stood by the window, staring out at the street like Alan might materialize from the shadows. "Do you really want to adopt him?" she asked quietly. Daniel turned to her. "I already have. I just want to make it official." She didn't cry, but she looked like she might. "You're amazing." "No, I just love him. That's all." A few days later, the lawyer contacted Alan. His response was expected. Rage, threats, insults. But when he realized he couldn't bully his way back into Lucas's life, not legally, his tone shifted. He wanted to meet Daniel. So, they met. At a small diner near the edge of town. Daniel came alone. Alan was already sitting at a booth, sunglasses on, chewing gum like he didn't give a damn about anything. Daniel sat across from him without a word. "Cute kid," Alan said casually. "I saw him. Didn't say anything. Just wanted to see his face." Daniel didn't blink. "You lost that right the day you walked away." Alan leaned back, smirking. "So what? You want to be his new daddy?" "I already am." Alan's jaw tensed, but he kept smiling. "You think she's gonna stay loyal this time? You think just 'cause you're playing house with her, she won't run back the second things get hard?" Daniel's hands stayed folded, but his voice was steel. I'm not here to fight for Anne. I'm here to protect Lucas. He's not a prize. He's a boy who doesn't even know you exist. Alan looked out the window. You think you can erase me? You think a piece of paper's gonna change who his real father is? No, Daniel said quietly. Being there every day does. Picking him up when he cries, making him breakfast, listening to his stories. That's what makes a father. You had your chance. You left. There was a pause. Then Alan laughed. You want him so bad? Fine, take him. But don't come crying when he grows up and wants to know why his real dad gave him away. Daniel stood. If he ever asks, I'll tell him the truth, that his real dad gave up. And I stepped in, and I never left. He walked out without another word. Back home, Anne was waiting. She didn't ask what happened. She just hugged him and whispered, Thank you. Lucas ran in from the other room, holding a toy car. Dan, watch this. Vroom! Daniel scooped him up, kissed the top of his head, and smiled. Show me, champ. I'm all yours. Weeks passed. Alan didn't come back. No more letters. No more daycare visits. No more late-night texts or arrogant voicemails. Just silence. And that silence felt like a door finally slamming shut. The paperwork moved forward. Slowly, like all legal things do. But it moved. Daniel filled out forms, submitted background checks, had interviews, and stood beside Anne in every step of the process. The adoption wasn't finalized yet, but the lawyer said it was looking good. Lucas, as always, lived in his own little world of cartoons and questions and peanut butter sandwiches. But even he could sense the change. He didn't ask about Alan. He stopped flinching when someone knocked on the door. And one day, without prompting, he said to Daniel over breakfast, You're my favorite person, you know that? Daniel smiled, heart full. Yeah, kiddo, I know. He still hadn't proposed to Anne again, not officially. But their life felt more real now than it ever had before. They shared the bills, shared the bed, shared every chaotic, exhausting, beautiful moment of raising a child together. It was imperfect, but it was theirs. Then came the night everything almost fell apart again. It started with a knock on the door. Daniel opened it, expecting the delivery guy. Instead, it was a stranger in a gray suit, holding a thin file and a badge. Daniel Harris? The man asked. Daniel's gut dropped. Yeah? I'm with Child Protective Services. We received a tip regarding the child living here, Lucas Turner. Mind if I come in? Daniel's voice turned cold. What kind of tip? I can't. Share that right now, sir. It's standard to do a welfare check when we receive reports of potential neglect or custody conflict. Anne appeared behind him, pale and silent. Lucas peeked from the hallway, holding his stuffed dinosaur. The man noticed him. Smiled. Hey there, champ. Don't be scared. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Daniel clenched his fists, but stepped aside. It was humiliating. The man walked around the apartment, asked Lucas questions about his bedtime, his food, who picked him up from school. Anne had to dig out every doctor's record, school enrollment paper, even old photos. And through it all, Daniel stood with his jaw locked, fury simmering just beneath the surface. After nearly an hour, the man finally left. I didn't see anything alarming. Honestly, he seems like a happy, healthy kid, he said before stepping out. But if you do hear from the biological father, contact us immediately. He's likely the one who filed the report. Daniel didn't even say goodbye, just shut the door and leaned against it. Anne broke down, right there in the hallway. He's trying to destroy us. Daniel wrapped his arms around her. No, he's trying to scare us. It's not going to work. But what if it does? She whispered. What if they actually try to take him? They won't. You don't know that. Daniel looked her in the eyes. Then we fight. Whatever it takes, we fight. I didn't build this life just to let him tear it down from a distance. That night, Daniel sat beside Lucas until he fell asleep, the kid's tiny hand curled around his finger like always. Anne stood in the doorway, watching. Her eyes were red, but calm now. "I don't want to wait anymore," she said. He looked up. She stepped forward. "I know we've had enough drama to last a lifetime, and I know it's not the moment most people dream of, but I'm done waiting. Let's get married. Let's stop pretending we're figuring things out. We already know." Daniel didn't smile. He stood, crossed the room, and kissed her. "We're getting married," he whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." They didn't plan a big wedding, just something small in the park, a few friends, a cake made by Anne's coworker. Lucas stood between them as they exchanged vows, holding both their hands. The day wasn't about the past. It wasn't about what was lost or who had walked away. It was about who stayed. Later that evening, while they danced under strung-up lights and the last of the cake was being packed up, Lucas pulled on Daniel's coat. "Hey, Dad?" Daniel looked down. Lucas grinned. "Can we do this every day forever?" Daniel laughed and picked him up. "Yeah, buddy, that's exactly the plan." The adoption hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. Rain tapped gently on the courthouse windows as Daniel, Anne, and Lucas sat in the hallway, waiting for their names to be called. Lucas wore a tiny blazer and clip-on tie that he kept tugging at, and Anne couldn't stop smoothing her skirt, nerves flickering in her every movement. Daniel looked calm on the outside, but his hands wouldn't stop fidgeting either. The silence between them wasn't tense, it was weighty, heavy with meaning, with hope. When the clerk finally stepped into the hall and called out, "Daniel Harris and Ann Turner," Daniel stood, reached down, and scooped up Lucas, who giggled softly into his shoulder. Inside the courtroom, everything felt surreal. The judge was kind, older, with soft eyes and a warm tone. But the questions came like clockwork. "You understand, Mr. Harris, that this adoption is permanent?" "I do." "You understand you are legally taking full responsibility as Lucas's father?" "I do." Anne held Daniel's hand. She was trembling. When asked to speak, she didn't read from the paper she brought. She looked the judge straight in the eye and said, "He's already been his father, this is just the paperwork catching up." Then the judge turned to Lucas. "And what do you think, young man?" Lucas blinked, then smiled wide. "Can I have his last name now, so we all match?" The courtroom broke into soft laughter. Even the judge chuckled. "Well," the judge said, smiling, "I think we have our answer." She signed the papers. Daniel signed. Anne signed. And just like that, Lucas Harris became official. Outside the courthouse, it stopped raining. Sunlight cracked through the clouds like a promise. They celebrated with pancakes at Lucas's favorite diner. No speeches. No toasts. Just sticky syrup, too much whipped cream, and 3 matching rings clinking on the table. Later that night, back at home, Daniel tucked Lucas into bed like always. But this time, Lucas hugged him tighter than usual. "You're my forever dad." "Now, right?" Daniel smiled, brushing a curl from his forehead. "I always was, bud. But now it's on paper, too." Lucas nodded seriously. "Good. 'Cause I don't want a different one, ever." "You never will." As Daniel turned off the light, Anne stood at the door watching them. Her eyes were soft, tired, full of quiet joy. When they got to the living room, she leaned into him, rested her head on his chest. "You saved us," she whispered. Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, Anne. We saved each other." Outside, the world kept turning. Loud, messy, unpredictable. But inside that little apartment, 3 hearts beat steady. One love, one family, born from heartbreak, rebuilt with grace and held together by the kind of promise no one walks away from, forever.